At Arm's Length, Episode 3. Who have you been calling all afternoon? Mark asked Alex. Gabrielle. I thought that was over, Nnamdi stated. They were in his house. It was his birthday, and Ngozi had invited them all over to theirs for a celebratory lunch. The group of men was seated under a wooden pergola in the garden, severing the bottle of brandy George had been thoughtful enough to bring with him to mark the occasion. She had something important today, and I just want to know how it went. But it's strange. She always returns calls, at least with a message, Alex frowned. You've known her for what? Barely 2 weeks, and you can attest to her habits? But wait, this is a first. Is the great Alexander Jacobs finally smitten with a woman? Is said woman not even remotely interested in him? George held a pretend microphone in his hand and moved it under Alex's chin, waiting for a reply as the other men laughed. Grow up, George. Some things are serious. By the way, you never told me you knew Gabrielle personally. Care to elaborate? He focused his attention on the other man and moved the hand holding the make-believe microphone back to him. No comment, George replied with a cheeky smile. Alex shook his head and tried the number again. She came with a friend to the charity event. I can't remember her name now, and I didn't think to ask for her number, Alex said in apparent frustration. Sandra. Luckily for you, I found her charming enough to find a way to get it. It wasn't easy. But for a day out on your yacht, and because I'm a good friend, Mark showed him his phone with a contact from a distance, and Alex laughed and shook his head. Just don't leave it like you did last time. I had to hire someone to clean up after you. Let me have her number. Mark sent him the contact, and Alex walked away from his friends to dial. Hi, Sandra. It's Alexander Jacobs. I've been trying to reach Gabrielle all day. Do you know if she's okay? Hi, Alexander. I'll let her know you called. She's just handling something at the moment and needs to be alone. I am seeing her later and relay your message. Thanks. Please tell her to send me a message, just so I know that she's okay. They said their goodbyes and he hung up and returned to his friends. Ngozi had joined them, drink in hand. I was listening to George speak animatedly about something. Were you able to get the information you wanted? Nnamdi asked. No. The call left me more worried than I was before. I didn't want to pry as I sensed Sandra wasn't willing to say anything else. I don't know where she lives, but I might swing by her office later on, just to see if she's there. Come on, man. It's over. Accept defeat and move on. This girl is called the Ice Queen for a reason. No amount of grand gestures on your part is going to get you what you want. You have a line of girls waiting to have a shot at being Mrs. Jacobs. Forget Gabrielle. She's too much work. Alex was about to respond to George's words when someone beat him to it. It was clear that Ngozi was making a supreme effort to control the anger she was feeling. George, you do understand that behind every single girl you've dated is a human being with feelings, right? I remember when I relocated after our marriage and was introduced to you guys, knowing you went to school with Nnamdi and were his support group in Lagos. I made an effort to get to know your girlfriends and I tried to form some sort of bond, but I soon discovered that it was an impossible feat with you lot. Just as soon as I'd learned the name, the girl in question was replaced by another. I gave up. You guys objectify women. We seem to be decorative elements in your lives, and I know that all your parents are waiting to organize your weddings. But you won't find anything serious from the search parameters you use. You complain most of them are just after your money, but you just go for the girls with pretty faces. Can't you have a conversation first? Ngozi, cool down. We are not so bad. I would like to settle down in a few years' time, but there's no hurry. Marriage is a lifetime commitment. You can't expect me to just ask the first girl I meet to marry me, George replied in a light tone, trying to dispel the tension. George, if you feel a woman is not an adequate partner for you to marry, then she should not be an adequate person for you to date. It's a very simple rule. You keep asking me to introduce you to my friends, and I have a number of single friends. The thing is, I like them, so will not subject them to the certain heartache. For once, Alex seems to be going out of his way for a woman, and you guys mock him instead of encouraging him. Good thing Gabrielle is blessed with a lot of common sense, as she must have guessed that you're a man of fleeting emotions, and has enough consideration for herself to remain as far from you lot as possible. Newsflash! The kind of girls you seem to have on a pedestal as married material are looking for something very different from entitled boys that live in Banana Island and think their philandering ways will disappear as soon as they say "I do" at the altar. I'm just warning you guys to avoid future problems. Nnamdi and I will only attend one wedding per person. Ngozi, that's harsh. You forget we all grew up together. We're not so different from this Nnamdi that you married. You guys might not live in Banana Island, but are you really any different? Look around you. But did you invite us here to give us a sermon? Because I have my mom for that. George defended his group of friends with obvious indignation. Nnamdi decided to intervene, knowing how hot-headed George could be and that his wife would have no qualms kicking him out of their house. George, we really are not the same. We have a very different past and present. Ngozi here has put in crazy hours to get her magazine where it is today, and my IT company did not just fall into my lap. My parents were middle-class working people. I did not have a trust fund. But let's lighten the mood and focus on Alex, since he seems to be the only one with real prospects here. I actually am very interested in her, Ngozi. I admit that at first it was just a challenge, and the dismissive way in which she spoke to me the first time we met added to my wanting to bring her down a peg or two. But now that I've known her a bit more, there's much more to her. She has me fascinated, and I can assure you that nobody else has been able to do that to date. We might laugh at Nnamdi when we hang out, and he leaves us early to go home to you. But I can assure you lot that if Gabrielle was in my life, I will do exactly the same thing. Ngozi clapped her hands and laughed with excitement at his words. Oh, Alex, there's still hope for you. I admire that woman so much. You know she started making a name for herself by entering design competitions in her category and winning them when she was in the UK. Then when she started getting important commissions, she didn't use her father's name or his connections. She did it all on her own. I spoke to her at your mom's event and was so impressed, but I couldn't get her to do an interview. A cover would be so inspiring, and not only for women, but for everyone. But I have to be honest, much as it makes me so happy you're showing genuine interest in someone like her, I did not see her steal any glances at you. I don't think that you're the object of her affections, and seeing that I'm fond of you, I also would not like you to crash and burn, Ngozi said. Yes, she made it clear from the beginning. She's a very direct person. She's dating someone, but in the end, she'll just have to make a choice. I'm just going to make it very difficult for her to pick the other guy. Alex laughed, taking a sip of his drink, as did the others. Yes, if he's not put a ring on her finger, then it's fair game. The woman nodded in encouragement. Ngozi, what about me? Do you think I'm the most hopeless man in this group? Surely I must have some redeeming qualities. I have to be better than George at least. His mother has warned him not to introduce her to any other woman after the last fiasco when two girls visited him at the same time. His mother was the unfortunate witness of the confrontation when they discovered they were both sharing the same man. To date, I have not subjected my mother to anything remotely as humiliating as that. Mark stated with evident pride. Definitely, the order is Alex, you, and then George. Yes, George is the worst, the woman replied. There was an exclamation of protest from the man in question as they all laughed. Yes, none of us have put our mothers through such a degrading show. How did you not coordinate that better? You deserve the last place on Ngozi's list, Alex teased. How was I to know that my mother would drop in unannounced? George asked. And then Lola was cooking, and she was exultant to be finally introduced to my mother, who in turn was happy to see someone actually interested in at least making sure I remained well nourished. Suddenly, Agnes turned up, and she had a key, so of course she let herself in. Why can't people use the doorbell? You all know what followed. My mother was really upset because she got between them to try to stop the fight, and she got pushed. That was when I lost it. Took my keys from both of them and told them that never again were they to come to my house, call me, or text me. When they left, my mother gave me an earful. Similar to what Ngozi put us through today. Only using my full name to address me, which she only does when she's extremely angry. But the last place? Mark and Alex better than me? I don't think you are taking all the factors into consideration. Yes, they all exclaimed in unison as he shook his head and consoled himself with his drink. Alex's phone beeped and he opened the incoming message. Hi, Alex. Sandra told me you called. Thanks for checking up on me. The meeting with my father did not at all go well, and I just need to organize my thoughts. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you want to talk? Paul and Sandra just left, and I am going to church. I need to spend some time in silence. It feels like my head's about to explode. You go and do that. But tell me where you'll be. I'll come and pick you up from anywhere. There was a moment of silence in which he thought he would not get a reply, but he soon saw that she was writing. I'll send you the address later on. He looked up and caught Ngozi studying him and smiled at her. I'll be seeing her later, hopefully. Now, where were we? Analyzing George's dysfunctional love life? We are past that. We are on to Mark now. But thanks for drawing attention back to my person. I can see Ngozi still has a lot to say. They all laughed as the woman in question seemed to be getting ready to launch another speech. Gabrielle knelt before the Blessed Sacrament. There was only one other man in adoration. Paul and Sandra, though filled with good intentions, had only made matters worse. But this was a place she came to find peace. Even when the answers did not come immediately, somehow, through the years, going there had become her safe place and refuge. Paul's words kept echoing in her mind like a broken record on auto-repeat. This is going to sound harsh, but you should consider the possibility that your mother is no longer alive. I think she would have tried to find you otherwise. You are no longer a child, and though your father decided for you long ago, he wouldn't have been able to keep her away from you now. She looked at her watch. It had been 2 hours since she had walked through the door. Where had the time gone? It felt like she had arrived only a few minutes earlier, though her watch said otherwise. She whispered a final prayer and, making the sign of the cross, got up and left the Perpetual Adoration Chapel. She had messages from Sandra, Paul, and Alex. As she had spoken to the other two, she texted Alex the address. Maybe he would say something different. She sat on the cement stairs leading to the church to wait for him. Half an hour later, a car drove into the almost empty car park and she waved at him to direct him to her. He studied her in silence and sat by her side. Her eyes were red-rimmed and she tried to speak twice, but stopped as she knew she would cry, and it was something she hated doing in public. She took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. and handed him the letter that he read in silence. He lied to me. For 27 years, he made me believe that my mother was dead. He took me away from where she could come back and find me, and he just kept on lying. The man next to her was silent, and she had gotten up to pace up and down. I have asked him and asked him so many times through the years, and I always got the same reply. Now I find out that Deborah, his faithful secretary turned mistress, was the mastermind behind all the brilliant excuses and lies that have been fed all my life. How dare they play with me like that? They moved me at will, like a piece on a chessboard, or a marionette controlled by strings, deciding what I was to do and where I was to go in every instance. At that point, she was past caring that Alex could see her cry. She hated anyone seeing her so vulnerable, but she was so angry. She wiped away the tears, standing with her back to him. Paul thinks that she's probably dead, because had she been alive, she would have found a way back to me. What if she went back to the house we lived in to look for me? It feels like they've never cared about me at all. My own family. But I can't stop to think about that now because I need to know. Know what? If she's still alive, I need to find her. I need for her to tell me to my face that she wanted me out of her life, that I was an obstacle to her plans. She turned around to look at him as he observed her in silence. I can't walk away, not if there's a small chance that I can see her again. She could be anywhere. Her letter doesn't give any clue as to where she was planning to leave to. I do think you should try to find her though, because having answers will give you peace. You need a plan. There's a flight leaving in 3 hours to Benin City. I bought a ticket online and that's your plan? To arrive in a city you're not familiar with at that time of the night? Not knowing where to go or look? No, you're not going to travel so late in the day. You asked me to come. I'm guessing to help sort out your ideas. And that one you just told me is a terrible one. You left when you were 7. So what can you remember? The name of your street? The name of a neighbor? A familiar landmark? I can't remember any of those things. That just proves my point that walking around aimlessly is not a good idea. I've asked my father to send me an email with those details, contact information for her family. Then you should wait a day or 2 to get them. I don't even know my mother's maiden name. I have nothing to start from on my own. I can't remember her face or her voice now, but I remember her emerald green rosary beads. Through the years, they remained in my memory. Every evening she would come into my room whilst I was in bed, and she would pray the rosary. I would stare at the emerald stones and fall asleep. And I can't remember ever having nightmares. I don't know my mother enough to know what she could or couldn't do. But I remember going with her to church. She would pray before the Blessed Sacrament, and I would sit, eventually slouching and falling asleep. Now that I do the same thing, I keep wondering if someone that did those things would have an affair and leave me behind. It just seems highly improbable. Those are basically all the memories I have of her. That and waiting for her to come back, until I fully understood the meaning of death. I remember asking my father continuously and getting the same curt narrative. Now I don't know if what I remember really happened, or if I've simply built a recollection from what he told me. I've known people that fast, do all-night prayers, and then go and do terrible things without batting an eyelid, said Alex. I want to support you in any way I can, but we need to be realistic. Those are probably the reasons why some people reject religion. They do not reject God, but the example being given by some that are evil personified. You believing a prayerful woman would not do what the letter says really doesn't carry a lot of weight. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I keep trying to remember more, but those are the images I have of her. A particular dress, her rosary beads, going to church with her. She's just a faceless figure in them. Your emerald green collection? Yes. I couldn't get the color out of my head, and so I started creating. I did it for her. I just had an idea. My father pointed out that he didn't change my name. Maybe she sent an email through the company website. It could be in our customer service email folder. Can you take me to the office? You must have a good number of emails. Maybe you could do it tomorrow with help? Yes. Thousands probably. But I can't sleep. And your suggestion of waiting a day or two for my father to reply does make sense, said Gabrielle. Besides, I haven't packed and would have only arrived in Benin with this bag. I can look through the emails and someone can help me track the IP address when I find a relevant one. They walked towards his car, and Gabrielle felt slightly better. Having something to do sort of made it seem like she was getting closer to an answer. The GR headquarters had an office for administrative staff and an inner one for her secretary and her, as well as the huge workshop of about 600 square meters where all the mechanical and manual sewing was done. Alex drove in the direction of the destination she had requested to be taken to. Nnamdi can help you trace the location of the emails. He's a computer whiz and even does some consults for the police from time to time. I was going to ask the company that set up and maintains our system, but I'll take you up on your offer. Have you had anything to eat? Alex asked. Oh, I couldn't possibly eat. We have a very good coffee machine in the office, and we always stock up on biscuits and snacks for the staff. My plan is to remain awake all night and survive on those. Tomorrow's Sunday, and the office will be closed, so I can go through the emails without anyone disturbing me. I can help if you let me. Thank you, but you've done enough, really. Just listening to my rants was a huge help. He looked at her, but she could not decipher his expression. Don't worry, it's safe. Nothing will happen to me. I have a very reliable security team. I've pulled all-nighters before when working on a new collection. They are very professional and will protect me. So, worry not. He slowed down into the driveway of the factory and honked. One of the sales security men approached and shone a bright light on them. Realizing it was his boss, he quickly put it down and hurried to open the huge metal gate. There's no need to drive in and out again. Thank you so much for listening to me and bringing me here. Don't stay all day here on your own. I'll call you tomorrow. Paul or Sandra will come for me tomorrow to go for Mass. We normally meet there or pick each other up and then go back to Sandra's for pancakes. It's tradition. I know they'll insist, and they'll come back with me and help me. They won't let me be alone. She squeezed his arm, smiled, and got out of the car. Once in her office, with a gigantic cup of coffee in hand, she switched on the laptop and went to the organized folders that Stephanie, her secretary, had classified per year. She saw in dismay that there were indeed thousands of emails to go through. She noted that her father had not yet sent her the information she had requested. Gabrielle hoped he would do so, without her having to contact him again. For the moment, she felt it was better to avoid another face-to-face with him. She could not trust that it would be civil and polite. Gabrielle woke up feeling neck pain and stiffness, which, when she looked around, she realized was due to the unnatural position she had slept in on her desk. Making rotator movements, she tried to ease her discomfort as she headed towards the shower in the built-in bathroom in her office. There was still so much to do, but a blast of cold water followed by coffee in her system would peck her up. She returned to her desk refreshed, with another huge mug of coffee and some biscuits. The screen on her mobile reflected some missed calls and voice messages, but the one that got her scrambling for the door was one from Deborah asking where she was, saying that her father had been taken to the hospital after having a heart attack. She would have taken one of the company cars but did not trust herself to drive, and so called an Uber. The wait for the car to arrive and the drive to the clinic felt endless, especially as she kept replaying the events of the last time she had been with her father and the things she had said in anger. All the resentment she thought she had dealt with and forgiven was resurfacing. She practically ran to the nurse's station to ask for directions, then hurried to the room she had been directed to. Her father lay in a state of unconsciousness on the bed, and she stood transfixed, staring at him. He looked so small. He was a man whose bearing had always impressed her, his huge frame enhanced by the native attire he always wore. It was difficult to reconcile the image before her with the man she had argued heatedly with barely hours before. "I hope you are happy. You did not stop until you got what you wanted." Gabrielle turned around, staring directly into the hostile eyes of her sister, Antonia. There had never been an opportunity to get to know each other well, and on her return, it had felt that they were competing for something. "How could I possibly be happy about this?" "Oh, I heard about your little scene yesterday. How you shouted and ranted. This is your fault. You got him all worked up. Maybe you did it on purpose. You wanted him to pay. For what exactly? For giving you a better life and all you have today? Or do you think that without the advantages you were given in life you would be where you are?" her sister asked with disdain. She observed the irate young woman. It was evident that she firmly believed everything she was saying. What had she been told? "Girls, this is not the place or the time. Your father needs his rest." "Antonia, I am sure Gabrielle laments her unfortunate outburst of yesterday. The truth is that Andrew started feeling ill soon afterwards. But of course, we can't say for sure what the cause was." Her tone and the look in her eyes made it clear that she had no doubts about who was to blame for the situation the family was going through, and she was staring right at her. But she led her daughter out of the room. Gabrielle blinked back the tears and sat down next to her father's bed. It felt like she had to be silent and just accept everything being done to her. Deborah and her father had made up an alternate reality for her, and she was not allowed to question their decisions or express anger or hurt, even though they had made her feel unloved and unwanted throughout her life. Of course, she did not want her father to die, angry as she was with him. She wished he had loved her, that their relationship had been of another nature, and maybe then things would have been different. Her eyelids felt heavy and slowly started closing. "You came." Did she dream the hoarse whisper? She opened her eyes, looking around her, suddenly remembering where she was. Reaching out, she touched her father's hand. She had not done that before. There had never been an opportunity for that. "You came," he said again. Looking up, she found the man's eyes open and staring at her. Gabrielle sat up and offered him water from the glass next to his bedside. Her father drank a little from the straw and indicated she was to put the bed in a more upright position, which she did. "I am sorry that our fight caused this. I just felt so betrayed. I couldn't help it. I had no idea you were ill. If I had, I would have tried harder to control myself. If you had not reacted the way you did, I would have questioned if there was blood running through your veins. I did betray you. I didn't know how to explain things to you. You were a child, and then afterwards it was just easier to avoid you altogether. I didn't want to think about what my apparent indifference was doing to you. I am so sorry. I wish I could have handled things better. Your mother was the one that knew how to..." He stopped, as if lost in thought. "Are you bothering him again? Haven't you done enough? I must..." "Deborah, leave us." The roar surprised both women, a reminder of his powerful presence, and that he was still very much with them. Tight-lipped, her stepmother, for want of a better word, turned around and closed the door behind her. I knew you were mine and mine alone, that she would not be able to love you. I had known Deborah for a number of years. She concentrates on tasks and completes them with military precision. Her focus has always been on me, never on those around me. They held no interest to her. Gabrielle frowned at her father's words as they brought a good number of questions to mind. She brought the straw to his lips again. I knew the day would come. I knew you would put up with Alexander Jacob's attempts at winning you over just to get to the truth. And so I dared you and promised you what you most wanted. But I wasn't ready for your emotions, justified as they were, or the buried memories that would resurface. In my shirt pocket is a folded piece of paper with the names and addresses of the people that I think are relevant to your search. I was on my way to hand it to you when I started feeling ill. I know you said I was to send you an email, but I thought you might have some more yelling to do or questions for me. I have no idea if the information is current, but I do know that you need to find out. You deserve that peace. Gabrielle got up and retrieved the folded note and put it in her bag. Her father was breathing heavily, and so she decided to be silent, not wishing to cause him any more stress. You can ask me what you want. What was she like? I can't remember her features. Nobody seems to have a photograph of her anywhere, and her image has just faded from my mind. Despite the anger I have felt for her through the years, there is no denying that she was beautiful. Her father was French. He had come to Nigeria with his company and fallen in love with her mother. They got married and usually spent the year traveling between France and Nigeria. Your mother was a twin. Her sister's name was Elise. They were like two peas in a pod, physically, but... She had a twin? Gabrielle repeated the words out loud, digesting the information as she mechanically offered her father the cup once again. Yes. When it happened, I threw the letter at Elise because she kept repeating that her sister would never do such a thing, and that finally shut her up. She couldn't deny that it was her handwriting, and neither could her parents. I told them that I never wanted to see them again. I couldn't stand to listen to their protests as they affirmed that their Sophie was not like that. They were a very devout Catholic family, and for them it just wasn't comprehensible. To be fair, had I not read the letter, I would never have believed such a thing, because Sophie hated lies and deceit. She would rather admit a wrongdoing than lie about it. But there it was, on ink and paper. I told you that your mother was sick, and a week later that she had passed away. I saw you sit facing the front door and watching it. I knew you were waiting for her to walk in, that you didn't understand my explanation. A few days later, I went to pick you up from school, and I saw Elise and her mother watching you from a distance. It was in that moment that I decided to leave. I had been toying with the idea, but after that, I made definite plans. I would start all over again, somewhere new, devoid of painful memories, and far away from all those people. She had an aunt and grandparents. The thought kept repeating itself over and over in her head. She struggled to return to reality and not miss a word that her father was saying. He had a faraway look. This was the longest conversation they had ever shared, and she took in every single word he said, storing them to properly mull over later. The year before it happened, I'd invested in 2 plots of land in Lagos and had actually started building blocks of flats, which was what I had planned and was starting to do in Benin. Get a number of properties to rent out and sell. So I moved you here without a word to her family. I have never spoken to them again since then. The company name is different from the one I had in Benin, and it's been difficult to trace me. I guess everything happens for a reason, because a month ago, Elise located my office and sent an email that was forwarded to me, asking me for your personal contact details. She didn't want to shock you by getting in touch directly, out of the blue. She threatened that if I didn't put you in contact with her, she would travel to Lagos, and that could be worse for everyone involved. I knew I was running out of time. I needed something like this to make me take drastic action. Alexander thought he was winning me over when he paid for our drinks and snacks that day at the club, but I saw a solution to my dilemma in him. Was she unhappy? Did you notice any changes in her in the weeks prior to her leaving? Surely there must have been a sign or something, Gabrielle asked him, and he shook his head. Nothing that could have made me suspect that she was having an affair and planning to leave us. She doted on you. Everywhere she went, she took you along. I'd been traveling a lot in the months that led up to that, as I was supervising 2 construction sites in Abuja as an external contractor. She had been sad, and now I think about it, probably depressed, as a month earlier she had suffered a miscarriage. Sophie didn't like to let on when things were not good for her. She would always say that she had a lot to be grateful for. But she wanted more children, and she'd had 2 other miscarriages, aside from the last one. I should have known that she wasn't all right, but she said she was, and I believed her, or I chose to believe her. I kept wondering who the person she went away with was, as she had not mentioned the name of any man in particular. I know she didn't like my associate, Efosa Idemudia. She avoided him whenever he visited. I even thought maybe she simply didn't want me to know what was going on, but he denied knowing her whereabouts. Did she have any friends she was close to? Elise was very close to her. There was nothing the one did that the other did not know. There was also Loveth. I can't remember her last name. They went to the same university and later settled in Benin City, so they hung out quite a lot together. I'm sorry. I'm getting tired. I've added Elise's email and everything I can remember to the list. I hope you find what you're looking for. His eyes were slowly closing, and she stroked his hand. You need to hang on. This is not your end. Promise me. He opened his eyes and stared directly at her. I promise. To stay up to date with my latest episodes, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.